Every leader of the Soviet Union explained. 1. Vladimir Lenin, 1917-24. The revolutionary, the man who started it all. Lenin was like the captain who started a brand new ship. He led a revolution, that's when people changed their government, and created the Soviet Union. Think of him as the person who wrote the rules for a completely new way of running a country. Fun fact, his real name wasn't Lenin, it was Vladimir Ulyanov. 2. Joseph Stalin, 1924-1953. The Iron Ruler, the scary boss. Stalin ruled for 29 years, longer than any other Soviet leader. He was very strict and scary. He built lots of factories and made the Soviet Union strong, but he was also very mean to people who disagreed with him. Think of him like a really strict principal who never smiled. Fun fact, Stalin means man of steel, and he was as tough as his name. After Stalin died, Malenkov became leader for just 2 years. He tried to make life easier for regular people, like letting them have more food and clothes. But other leaders didn't like his ideas, so he didn't last long. Fun fact, he was kicked out of his job faster than most kids change their favorite toy. 4. Nikita Khrushchev, 1955. The reformer, the corn-loving leader. Khrushchev was like a teacher who said the old way was wrong. He told everyone that Stalin was a bad leader and tried to fix things. He also really loved corn and wanted to grow it everywhere in Russia, even where it was too cold. Fun fact, he once took off his shoe and banged it on a table during an important meeting. 5. Leonid Brezhnev, 1964-1982. The long ruler, the slow and steady guy. Brezhnev ruled for 18 years and liked to keep things exactly the same. It was like having a grandpa in charge who said, "We don't need to change anything." The country got a bit sleepy and boring under his rule. Fun fact, he loved cars and medals so much, he gave himself over 100 medals. 6. Yuri Andropov, 1982-1984. The spy chief, the former secret agent. Andropov used to be the boss of spies. He tried to make people work harder and stop being lazy, but he got very sick and only ruled for 15 months. He was like a detective trying to solve the country's problems. Fun fact, he was the only Soviet leader who used to catch bad guys for a living. 7. Konstantin Chernenko, 1984. The sick leader, the placeholder. Poor Chernenko was already very old and sick when he became leader. He only lasted 13 months and couldn't do much because he was too weak. It was like having a substitute teacher who was always absent. Fun fact, he was so sick he could barely stand up during important ceremonies. The man who opened the doors. Gorbachev was the youngest and most different leader. He said, "Let's be friends with everyone, and people should be able to say what they think." He opened up the country like opening windows in a stuffy room. But all these changes were so big that the Soviet Union actually broke apart into many smaller countries. Fun fact, he has a birthmark on his head that looks like a map. So there you have it. Every Soviet leader explained from Vladimir Lenin to Mikhail Gorbachev. We've covered the complete Soviet Union leadership timeline and learned how each of these leaders of the Soviet Union explained different ways to run a country. From Joseph Stalin's leadership to Mikhail Gorbachev's reforms that led to the Soviet Union collapse explained. This history of Soviet Union leaders shows us how the USSR leaders documentary would tell their story. Understanding Soviet Union political history helps us see how these Soviet Union presidents and general secretaries shaped the world. Thanks for joining our Soviet Leaders List adventure. Now you know the Soviet Union history in detail.